The broken Cathar ships did not vanish with their usual silent grace. They limped away, leaking streams of dark coolant and shattered fragments. Their movement was a slow, pained crawl into the deeper dark. The psychic pressure that had filled the system, that drumbeat of hunger, was gone. In its place was a hollow silence, punctuated only by the crackle of debris on the Martian plain. On the bridge of the Guangzhou, Jin and Mina watched the main viewer. The image showed the largest of the Cathar wrecks. It had crashed in a remote desert basin, throwing up a plume of rust-colored dust that was slowly settling. The ship did not look majestic or terrifying anymore. It looked like a dead insect, its jagged limbs twisted at wrong angles. "Is it over?" Mina asked, her voice soft. She was checking the long-range sensors. The two surviving ships were fading from detection range, heading out of the solar system. For now, Jin said. He felt no triumph, only a deep, tired relief and a knot of cold tension in his stomach. He switched the comms to the command channel. "Control, this is Guangzhou. Hostiles are in full retreat. One ship destroyed on site. What are your orders?" General Li's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, the lines on his face carved deeper by the last few hours. But his eyes were clear and sharp. "Hold position, Captain. Observe and record everything. The compact is already asking questions. A lot of questions." The questions began almost immediately. The first transmission was from the compact observation ship. Emissary Elvar's face appeared, its large eyes wide with a confusion that bordered on distress. "General Li, the Cathar have retreated. This is unprecedented. What was the energy signature we detected? It seemed almost primitive. How was this accomplished?" Li's reply was simple. "It was not an energy signature, emissary. It was a physical impact. We hit them with kinetic projectiles." There was a long silence from Elvar. "Kinetic? You mean solid matter? You threw rocks?" "We threw very heavy, very fast spears," Li corrected, his tone flat. "Their ships are designed to absorb and convert energy. They have no effective defense against being punched full of holes by dense metal moving at several kilometers per second. They have no biological precedent for it." Another silence, longer this time. The concept was too alien, too simple for the advanced minds of the compact. "You fought them with geology?" "We fought them with Newtonian physics," Li said. "An object in motion stays in motion." They got in the way. Over the next few days, the Martian base became the center of the galaxy. Transmissions flooded in from a dozen member species of the compact species that had lost homeworlds to the Cathar, species that had lived in silent dread of the next culling cycle. They were not celebratory messages. They were messages of desperate, hungry curiosity. A delegation arrived. They were the Veln, a species whose homeworld had been turned to ash 2 centuries before. Their leader, an elderly statesman with skin like polished bronze, stood in the command bunker. He looked at the schematics of the tungsten rod launchers, at the diagrams of the abrasive clouds. His voice, translated through a small device, was full of awe and sorrow. "You did not destroy their power. You broke their structure. You caused them systemic failure. We always tried to be stronger. You chose to make them weaker." General Li nodded. "We did not meet them on the battlefield they chose. We forced them to play a game they did not understand." The Veln ambassador looked at Li, then at Yuna and Tay, who stood nearby, exhausted but proud. "Can you teach us?" he asked. The question was not just his. It echoed from 100 worlds, from 1,000 species who had only known how to lose. Li did not answer immediately. He looked at Jin and Mina, who had just entered the bunker. He saw in their eyes the memory of Hesper 4's gray silence and the fiery rain over Mars. He turned back to the ambassador. "We are not teachers of war," Lee said. "What we did was not a new tactic for the galaxy. It was an old one, forgotten by everyone else. The predator relies on the prey, acting like prey. We did not act like prey. We acted like a trap." He gestured to Yuna and Tay. "But we will share the schematics. We will share the mathematics. The principles are simple. The building is hard. You must be willing to dig, to build big, dumb machines in the ground. You must be willing to use your world as bait." The ambassador bowed his head, a profound gesture of respect. "We will dig. We will build. We have nothing left to lose." Later, on the quiet bridge of the Guangzhou, Jin and Mina prepared to leave Mars. The planet was quiet again. The projectors shut down, the silos sealed. The only new feature was the ugly, black scar of the wreck in the desert. A personal message came through for Jin. It was from General Lee. "The galaxy is changing, Captain," Lee said. "We have shown that the unstoppable can be stopped. Now everyone will want to know how to do it. There will be a new kind of work, not just hauling cargo, carrying knowledge, showing people how to build their own traps. The pay would be terrible. The danger would be high." Jin looked at Mina. She was already nodding, a small, determined smile on her face. She had seen what happened when people had no hope. She liked the idea of carrying a different kind of cargo. Jin turned back to the screen. "What would the job be called, sir?" Lee almost smiled. "I suppose you'd be consultants." Jin shook his head. "No, we'll just be delivery. We'll deliver the instructions." He thought for a moment. "Tell them we'll come. We'll show them how to build a better mousetrap." He closed the channel. Outside the viewport, the stars were sharp and clear. They no longer looked like hiding places for monsters. They looked like distant lights, other homes, other people waiting for a message. A message that said the night did not belong to the hunters anymore. Mina powered up the engines. The familiar hum filled the ship. Where to first? She asked. Jin plotted a course. Not for a colony, but for the coordinates the Veln had provided. "Somewhere they need to learn," he said. "Let's go start the delivery." The Guangzhou turned away from the red planet and moved slowly, steadily, into the star-dusted dark, carrying a simple, powerful idea out to a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight back. The end was a silent, beautiful thing. That was what Executor Kavar thought, staring at the main screen on his flagship, the Stalwart Resolve. Outside, the dark of space was lit by the soft, cool glow of 1,000 coalition ships. They were elegant vessels, their hulls smooth and shining like pearls. They were the product of centuries of perfect science. And they were losing badly. The Devourers did not fight with beauty. They were a storm of sharp edges and hungry mouths. Their ships looked like broken teeth and poisoned claws. They moved in swarms, a black wave that crashed against the shining line of the coalition fleet. They did not use energy weapons. They used acid that ate through metal and living filaments that grabbed ships and pulled them apart to be consumed. For every Devourer ship that died in a flash of coalition laser fire, 10 more took its place. Kavar, a Thalassian, stood tall and still. His skin was the color of deep ocean stone, his eyes large and dark. He felt the weight of his people, of every species in the coalition, on his shoulders. The battle at the Cygnus Rift was the last stand. Behind this point lay the core worlds, the homes of ancient civilizations. There was no place left to run. "Executor, the luminous dawn has been overcome," a tactical officer said, her voice tight. On the screen, one of the graceful, bird-like ships of the Xylos was swallowed by the black swarm. It flashed once and was gone, Kavar did not flinch. He had seen too much. Close the gap in the line. Order the Kesari drones to fill the space. The drones are ineffective, sir. The enemy's corrosive mist disables them within moments. That was the problem. Every tool the Coalition had was being countered. Their technology was superior, but it was also predictable. The Devourers were a force of nature, adapting and consuming. It was like trying to fight a flood with a perfectly crafted cup dot in a quiet corner of the bridge. Scholar Tleen watched her own screens. She was Xylos, slender with fine silver skin that shimmered slightly. Her role was to observe and understand the enemy. Right now, she understood only one thing. They were all going to die. Her long fingers moved over her console, recording the death of the luminous dawn. She noted the failure of the ship's phase shield. It was designed to scatter energy, not to resist a physical, clinging acid. A fundamental design flaw. Knowing it did not help. A new contact, a sensor officer called out, confusion in his voice. From the outer marker. It is very small, and its energy signature is primitive. Kavar sighed. Probably a piece of wreckage or a scout from some minor species trying to flee. Ignore it. Focus on the main swarm. It is hailing us, Executor. On the general emergency band. Put it through, Kavar said, his patience thin. The main viewer switched from the battle to the interior of a different bridge dot. The difference was shocking. The stalwart Resolve's bridge was a place of soft light, clean lines, and calm efficiency. This new bridge was harshly lit, filled with blinking red and yellow lights. Wires hung from panels. The walls were not smooth pearl, but gray metal covered in screens and physical switches. The beings standing there, solid. They were shorter than Thalassians, with skin tones of warm brown and pale cream. They wore simple dark blue uniforms, not flowing robes. One of them, a female with sharp eyes and black hair, tied tightly back, stepped forward. Coalition Fleet, this is Captain Su Jin of the Earth vessel Unyielding Spirit. We have received your general distress call. Her voice was clear, the translation software working perfectly. But the words made no sense. Earth? That was a pre-contact world, a noisy, divided little planet in an unexplored arm of the galaxy. They had only just begun to travel between their own planets. They were not a spacefaring power. This is Executor, Kavar. You are in an active war zone, Earth vessel. This is no place for observers. You must leave immediately if your craft is capable. He could not keep the disdain from his voice. Their ship was a blocky, ugly thing on the scanner. It looked like a rock with engines bolted to it, not another human. A male with a tired face named Ambassador Day moved into view beside the captain. We are not here to observe, Executor. We are here to fight. The United Earth government offers the full military support of humanity to the Galactic Coalition. A stunned silence fell on the bridge of the stalwart Resolve. Then, a soft ripple of disbelief, even amusement, passed through the crew. It was a sad, desperate joke. Your offer is noted, Kavar said, his tone making it clear it was not. But this battle is beyond your comprehension. Your technology is, with respect, prehistoric. You would be destroyed in seconds. Withdraw. Save your species from witnessing annihilation. On the human ship, Captain Su Jin's jaw tightened. Ambassador Day simply nodded, as if he had expected this. We understand your assessment, but our analysis of the battle suggests your current tactics are failing. We have different methods. Your methods are irrelevant, Kavar interrupted, his eyes going back to the main battle. A whole squadron of fighters was being wiped out. This is a war of technology, in scale you cannot possibly grasp. We grasp survival, they said quietly. And right now, you are not surviving. Kavar was about to cut the transmission when alarms blared. Executor, a Devourer Vanguard element has broken through the 7th quadrant. They are moving fast, on an intercept course with the human vessel. On the screen, Kavar saw it. A wedge of 20 Devourer skirmish ships, each like a twisted blade, had slipped through a gap. They were ignoring the Coalition ships, perhaps seeing them as harder targets. They were heading straight for the primitive, easy meal that was the unyielding spirit. Scholar Tleen leaned forward. Here was a cruel experiment about to happen. She would record the limits of primitive defense systems. Captain Su Jin on the viewer turned her head, listening to someone off-screen. She gave a short, sharp nod. Executor, Ambassador Day said, his voice still calm. You are about to see our irrelevant methods. We will handle this. Unyielding spirit out. The transmission cut. The view returned to the battle. The Coalition sensors focused on the human ship and the incoming swarm. Kavar felt a flicker of something that was not pity. It was resignation. He would have to watch another species die today. The Devourers closed in, their formations tightening for the kill. The human ship just sat there, drifting, its engines dark. It looked dead already. Then it moved. It did not turn gracefully. It rolled like a heavy stone being pushed, presenting its broadside. Along its ugly hull, dozens of metal hatches slid open. They were not the ports of elegant beam weapons. They were simple tubes. What are those? A tactical officer whispered from the tubes. Fire bloomed. Not the clean, bright lines of plasma. This was the dirty, yellow-orange fire of chemical propellants. Dozens of projectiles, trailing smoke, shot out into the vacuum. They were missiles, but not smart, guided needles. They were large, crude things. The Devourer swarm, accustomed to dodging energy fire, did not even change course. Energy weapons took time to travel. These physical objects were already among them. The first missile hit a Devourer ship not with an energy explosion, but with a direct, physical impact. A shaped charge of high explosives, designed to pierce asteroid rock, slammed into the organic hull and detonated from within. The ship didn't shimmer and collapse. It shattered, erupting into a cloud of hard fragments. Then the others hit. The space around the human ship became a storm of metal and fire. Chunks of shattered Devourer ships flew out, hitting other ships in the swarm. It was chaos. A brutal, messy, physical chaos. The human ship fired again. This time, from different ports, it launched massive, dense rods of metal. They had no explosives at all. They were just tungsten, accelerated to a fraction of light speed by magnetic rails inside the ship. They punched through the Devourer vessels like a fist through paper, leaving neat, catastrophic holes. In less than a minute, the vanguard of 20 Devourer ships was gone. Not disabled, not driven back, gone. Reduced to expanding clouds of debris, the bridge of the stalwart Resolve was utterly silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the life support systems. Executor Kavar could not speak. His strategic mind, trained in the doctrines of energy shield harmonics and phased array attacks, was blank. He had just seen a problem solved, not with superior science, but with a hammer. Scholar Tleen broke the silence, her scientific curiosity overriding the shock. Fascinating, she breathed, her eyes wide on her scanner data. No directed energy. Pure kinetic and chemical force. Their vessel. It is not a warship. It is a mobile weapons platform. A fortress. They have taken a hull and filled it with every possible physical weapon. On the main screen, the blocky, ugly human ship finished its roll, its weapon ports closing. It looked exactly the same as before, scarred, inelegant, and solid. A new transmission light blinked. Kavar found his voice. It was rough. Open the channel. Captain Su-jin's face appeared again. There was no smile, no pride, just a steady, focused calm. Executor, the immediate threat is neutralized. We are holding position. Our offer of assistance remains open. We suggest a tactical meeting at your earliest convenience. This time, Kavar did not dismiss it. He looked at the floating wreckage between his fleet and the human ship. He looked at the endless black swarm still pressing against his lines. He had just watched the impossible. A meeting, he said, the word strange in his mouth. Yes, we will. Discuss this. The silence on the bridge of the stalwart resolve stretched on, thick and heavy. Executor Kavar stared at the tactical screen. The icon for the human ship, labeled Unyielding Spirit, glowed steady, stubborn white amid the red swarm of devourer signals and the fading blue lights of his own fleet. The debris cloud from the destroyed devourer vanguard was already drifting, a monument to brutal, effective violence. Kavar's mind, a finely tuned instrument of Thalassian war theory, struggled. Their doctrine was built on control, on energy management, on the elegant dance of shields and focused fire. What he had just witnessed was not a dance. It was a demolition. Executor, his tactical officer said, voice hesitant. The human vessel is requesting a secure data link. They are transmitting a tactical proposal. Put their representative on screen, Kavar ordered, his pride warring with a desperate, cold logic. The human captain, Su-jin, reappeared. Behind her, Kavar could see the chaotic bridge, humans moving with a purpose that seemed frantic, but was clearly coordinated. Executor, she began, no greeting wasted. Our scans show your fleet's formation is rigid. You defend points of space. The enemy does not care about points. They care about consumption. They will flow around you, like water around stones, until the stones are worn away. Kavar stiffened. We hold the line. It is the way of honorable battle. It is the way to lose, Su-jin said flatly. We propose a different approach. You give us command of one flank, a sector you are already struggling to hold. We will not hold it. We will make it a killing field. A wave of disbelief rippled through Kavar's bridge crew. Delegate command? To primitives? The very idea was offensive. And how would you accomplish this? Killing field? Kavar asked, his tone icy. On the viewer, Su-jin glanced to her side. A younger man with tired eyes, named Jay, was called over. He did not look like a warrior. He looked like someone who had not slept in days. Our analysis of the swarm's movement suggests it's not a single mind, but a layered consciousness, Jay said, his voice quiet but clear. They react to energy spikes and large, coherent signatures. Your ships are bright, loud targets to their senses. He pulled up a simple graphic on a screen. It showed waves of red dots flowing around large blue circles. We propose we become a different kind of target. We will create chaos. Multiple, small, unpredictable signatures. We will bait them into areas we have seeded with kinetic mines and targeted radiation bursts. It's called area denial. We won't stop them from entering the zone. We will make them not want to be there. Scholar Tleen, watching from her science station, felt a thrill of understanding. It was psychological warfare applied to a hive mind, not overpowering the enemy, but confusing its instincts. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Kavar was silent for a long moment. The main battle was not going well. Another coalition ship, a Kasari cruiser, was being overwhelmed, its elegant hull turning black and brittle under the devour acids. He had no good options left. You will have control of Sector Theta 7, he said finally, the words tasting like ash. It is a collapsing position. You will be alone there. We cannot spare ships to support you. We don't need your ships. Captain Sujin said. "We need your data. Give our systems full access to your long-range sensor feed." The request was another shocking intimacy. Military sensor data was a fleet's most precious secret. Kavar closed his dark eyes for a second, then opened them. "You will have it. Do not make me regret this." The channel closed. On the unyielding spirit, the atmosphere changed. The calm focus snapped into urgent action. Captain Sujin turned to her crew. "All right, Theta 7. Jay, you're on swarm analysis. Link with their sensor net. Find the flow patterns. Mira, to the hangar. Prep the wasps and get Goliath ready for deployment. We're not just defending a point. We're digging a trench." In the hangar bay, the air vibrated with noise and the smell of oil and welding sparks. This was not a clean, quiet place for elegant fighters. It was a garage, a workshop. In the center stood a massive humanoid shape, a mining mech they called Goliath. It was 15 meters tall, its armor patched and welded in a dozen places, painted a faded industrial yellow with crude hazard stripes. One of its hands was a giant hydraulic clamp. The other had been replaced with a jury-rigged plasma cutter from an orbital smelter. Mira, a woman with powerful arms and her hair tied up in a practical knot, was halfway up the mech's leg, checking a hydraulic line. She heard the call. A fierce grin spread across her face. She slapped the metal hull. "You hear that, big guy? We're on." Back on the bridge, Jay was drowning in data. The Coalition sensor feed was a river of information clean, precise, and overwhelming. It measured energy spectra, gravitational ripples, and quantum states. Jay needed simpler things. He wrote quick, messy pieces of code, filters that stripped away the elegance and looked for basic patterns, clusters, vectors, density changes. On his screen, the beautiful, deadly dance of the devourer swarm began to resolve into a simpler picture. It was not random. It was a pattern of consumption, flowing toward the strongest energy sources. It was predictable. "Captain," he said, his voice gaining confidence, "I've got it. They're feeding on your ship's shield emissions and engine signatures. They're attracted to the power. They're like moths to a flame. So we give them a different flame," Sujin said. "A dangerous one." The unyielding spirit moved toward Sector Theta 7. It was a mess of space, littered with the husks of destroyed Coalition drones. As they entered, Captain Sujin gave the order. "Launch the wasps. Deploy the chaff pods." From the sides of the carrier, dozens of small craft shot out. They were not fighters. They were modified mining and repair drones, piloted by humans who are used to operating in dangerous, cluttered environments. They flew in jagged, unpredictable patterns. At the same time, the ship launched hundreds of small canisters that exploded into clouds of metallic dust and radioactive particles to the Coalition sensors. The sector dissolved into a blizzard of false signals and noise. It was visual, sensor, and radar chaos. The effect on the Devourer swarm was immediate. A large tendril of the black ships, moving to encircle a Coalition battleship, suddenly hesitated. Their target, the bright, powerful battleship, was still there. But now, a new, buzzing, chaotic signal loomed beside it. It was maddening to their senses. A part of the swarm broke off, drawn to the noise like piranhas to a splash. "Swarm element diverted," Jay called out, watching his screen. "They're entering the kill zone." The human drones, the wasps, scattered like startled insects. They led the Devourer ships into the heart of the metallic chaff cloud. Then, from hidden launch tubes on the unyielding Spirit, a volley of missiles fired. These were different, heavier, slower. They did not aim for the ships. They aimed for points in space ahead of them and detonated. They were fragmentation warheads, filling space with a storm of high-velocity shrapnel. the lead devourer ships ran straight into the cloud of metal. Their organic hulls were tough, but not designed for such a blunt physical barrage. They were shredded. On the stalwart Resolve, Kavar and his crew watched, stunned. Their screens showed the chaos in Sector Theta 7 as a confusing mess. But the results were clear. The human sector was holding. More than holding, it was actively destroying the enemy, drawing them in and cutting them apart. They are not fighting the ships, Scholar Tleen whispered, her analysis complete. They are fighting the enemy's mind. They understand the predator's instinct better than we ever did. We tried to be a stronger prey. They are pretending to be wounded prey and turning it into a trap. Then a new signal appeared. A large devourer cruiser, annoyed by the nuisance, turned its full attention toward the unyielding spirit. It began firing globs of corrosive plasma. "Captain, incoming heavy." A crewman yelled. Su-Jin didn't blink. "Myra, they're sending a bigger one." "You're up. Draw its fire." "Jay, find me a soft spot." In the hangar, Mira slammed the cockpit of Goliath closed. The mech came to life with a deep hydraulic whine. It stomped toward the launch bay doors, which opened to the starry battlefield. With a kick of its massive thrusters, it launched into the void. The Devourer cruiser saw the new large metal object and targeted it. Streams of acid shot toward Goliath. Myra didn't try to outrun them. She spun the heavy mech, using the armored back as a shield. The acid sizzled, eating into the thick plating, but not through. She returned fire with the rivet cannons on the mech's shoulders. Massive metal spikes, fired with magnetic force, punched into the cruiser's bony protrusions. "Jay, where am I hitting it?" Myra's voice crackled over the comm. On the bridge, Jay was feeding the Coalition sensor data into his crude model. He saw a concentration of energy deep within the cruiser, its main nerve cluster. 20 degrees to your right, Myra. Deep inside. It's their core. Myra saw the spot. It was covered in thick, bony armor. Her rivets couldn't pierce it. She grinned. "Okay, close quarters it is." She pushed Goliath's thrusters to full, and the bulky mech lumbered forward, crashing directly into the side of the organic cruiser. The impact was felt throughout both vessels. She activated the plasma cutter in the mech's right arm. With a roar of superheated gas, a blade of white-blue energy erupted. She drove it like a knife into the hull, sawing through the armor. Inside the cruiser, the effect was catastrophic. The plasma sea. The hole in the Devourer swarm did not close. It festered. The human's digital screech had not just killed ships. It had infected the hive mind's ability to think in that sector. The Coalition fleet, seizing the moment with a desperation that overrode their doctrine, pushed forward. For the first time since the battle began, the red tide of Devourers was not advancing. It was being pushed back, but the cost of creating that opening was now being tallied on the unyielding spirit. The bridge smelled of burned wiring and sweat. Alert lights flashed amber and red across many stations. A direct hit from a Devourer acid spitter had melted through a section of the outer hull, and while the internal seals had held, a whole battery of missile tubes was now a fused, useless mess. Repair crews in heavy suits scrambled through damaged corridors, their voices sharp and urgent over the internal comms. "Captain." Su-Jin listened to the damage reports with a stone-like face. "Seal off sections 7 through 9. Reroute power from non-essential systems. Life support stays online. Keep the engines and primary weapons fed." In the hangar, the scene was worse. Myra stood before Goliath. The mech's right arm was gone below the elbow, severed by a corrosive blast. The armor on its chest was deeply scarred and pitted. A team was already welding a thick, crude plate of replacement metal over the worst of it. "We don't have another plasma cutter, Myra." a grease-smeared mechanic said, his voice apologetic. Then give me a claw. Or a hammer. Just make sure it's heavy, Mira replied, her eyes assessing the damage. The machine was hurt, but it was still standing. Like the ship. Like all of them. On the stalwart Resolve, the mood was different, but strained in its own way. The shock of the human success was giving way to sharp division. The command channel was a storm of voices. The tactic was effective, I grant you, the Kasari Admiral, Never, said, his image flickering on the screen. His delicate features were tight with disapproval. But look at their vessel. It is dying. Their methods are unsustainable. They are a single brilliant flare that will burn out and leave us in greater darkness. We must order them to withdraw and conserve their remaining strength. Executor Kavar felt the old frustration rise. Withdraw to where, Admiral? Their flare is the only reason your ship is not currently being boarded. They fight with what they have, and they are winning us this battle. At what cost to galactic stability? Countered another, a Thalassian philosopher commander. They introduce chaos as a weapon. What happens when this battle is over? Do we allow such? Unpredictable and violent methodologies to spread? Honor has kept the peace for millennia. Scholar Tleen, who had been given a temporary place on the command deck, spoke up. With respect, Commander, honor is currently being digested by the Devourers. The humans are not fighting for honor. They are fighting for survival. Their psychology is built on adaptation to crisis. To them, this is just another crisis. The most dangerous kind of species, Never hissed. One with no rules. While the leaders argued, the battle entered a new phase. The Devourer swarm, wounded and confused, was not retreating. It was recoiling, like a great beast pulling back its injured limb to strike again with another. The collective mind was learning, adapting to the new kind of pain humanity inflicted. The chaotic edges of the swarm began to solidify, forming into thicker, more concentrated spearheads aimed directly at the source of the disturbance, the human-held sector and the ships near it. On the human bridge, Jay saw it first. The data streams from the Coalition sensors showed the shift. Captain, he said, his voice tired. They're adapting. They're ignoring the chaos signals. They're forming dense clusters. They're going to try to overrun us with pure mass. They'll just bulldoze through. Su Jin watched the tactical map. A huge, slow-forming fist of Devourer ships was gathering, pointed at her heart. They've figured out our tricks. Time for a new one. She opened a channel to KVARR. Executor. We need to talk. Now. The private channel connected the two bridges. Kavar saw the fatigue on Sujin's face, the damage reports scrolling beside her. He also saw the unbroken resolve in her eyes. We see the formation, Kavar said. They are targeting your position. We will attempt to draw them off. You'll fail, Sujin said bluntly. They're done being distracted. They want the problem eliminated. That's us. So we have to be the solution in a different way. She gestured, and Jay put a simple schematic on the shared screen. We become the anvil. Kavar studied it. The plan was audacious. It called for the human forces to dig in, to become an immovable, spiky target, to hold the attention of the main Devourer assault at all costs. Meanwhile, the entire, still powerful Coalition fleet would pull back, regroup, and then strike as one massive hammer onto the back of the swarm as it pressed against the human anvil. It is a classic pincer movement, Tleen observed quietly. But the anvil must be immensely hard, or it will be shattered. It will be, Sujin said. But your fleet, the hammer, has to hit with everything. Not just energy weapons. You have to use kinetics. You have to throw rocks. We'll share our designs for magnetic rail systems, the basics. Your engineers can scale them up in hours. Hit them with force, they cannot disperse. The philosophical objections erupted again from the other leaders listening in. Share weapon designs? With a pre-contact species? This is unacceptable. Ambassador Day's face appeared beside Su Jin's. He looked older than he had at the battle's start. "Honored admirals," he said, his voice dry. "You are worried about rules and stability. A few hours ago, you were worried about extinction. The weapon designs are a gift. Take them. Use them. Survive. Then, if you wish, you can debate the etiquette of it all over our graves." The offer stands. The silence that followed was profound. Kavar looked at the tactical map, at the gathering storm about to fall on the humans. He looked at his own fleet, still strong but directionless. He made the hardest and clearest decision of his life. "The coalition fleet will adopt the human plan," he announced, his voice cutting through the channel. "All vessels will receive the human schematics. All engineering teams are to implement them immediately. We reposition for the hammer blow. The human sector is now the anvil. We will not let it break." The orders went out. Across the fleet, from the mightiest Thalassian dreadnought to the smallest Xylos skirmisher, engineers and AI began frantically adapting. Elegant ships were fitted with crude, powerful magnetic coils. Bays designed for smart missiles were loaded with chunks of scrap metal and dense ore. It was ugly. It was inelegant. It was hope. On the unyielding Spirit, the final preparations began. They were past clever tricks now. This was about endurance. "Jay, coordinate with their fleet command. You are now the point of the anvil. You tell them when to swing," Su Jin ordered. "Myra," she continued, "you hold the line in front of the ship. Nothing gets through to the hull." Myra, now inside Goliath with a giant welded-together metal claw where her hand used to be, nodded. "They'll break their teeth on us, Captain." The Devourer spearhead began its move. It was a slow, terrifying advance, a wall of chitin and rage coming to crush the irritant. The human drones buzzed around it, stinging, but were brushed aside. The unyielding Spirit fired its remaining kinetic rods, punching holes in the wall that quickly sealed over. The wall kept coming. The first impacts shook the human ship. Alarms wailed. On the view screen, a sea of black. Scrabbling forms filled the stars. Captain Su Jin held onto her command chair, her knuckles white. She looked at the tactical screen, at the coalition fleet icons moving into position behind the swarm. The hammer was almost ready. "Stand firm," she said to her crew, to her ship, to herself. Just a little longer. The universe held its breath, waiting for the swing. The universe watched. The final act was not a whisper of elegant energy, but a roar of bending metal and human defiance. The Devourer spearhead crashed into the human sector like a black asteroid belt. The unyielding Spirit shook with every impact. Warning sirens were a constant scream. Crew members braced themselves at their stations, their faces lit by the flashing red lights. Jay's world was a stream of data and strain. He was the nerve center, the link between the anvil and the hammer. His screen showed two terrible images. One was a flood of hostile red icons consuming his ship's position. The other was the slow, deliberate movement of the coalition fleet, a blue crescent forming behind the swarm. "Hammer formation at 70%, he called out, his voice raw. "They need 5 more minutes." "We don't have 5 minutes," the tactical officer yelled back. A massive shudder rocked the bridge as something explosive hit the forward hull. Section 3 is reporting complete decompression. We are losing containment. Captain Su Jin gripped her chair. "Seal it and hold. Myra, we need a buffer. Now." Outside, in the cold, airless chaos, Mira was the buffer. Goliath stood planted before the main hangar bay doors, a scarred statue. The mech's new claw was already dented and scorched. The Devourer ships, smaller attack skiffs, swarmed around her like angry insects, spitting acid and trying to land on the larger human ship that Myra didn't try fancy moves. She swung the giant claw in wide, brutal arcs, smashing skiffs into each other. She used the mech's bulk as a shield, taking hits that would vaporize a smaller craft. Her cockpit was a cacophony of damage alarms and her own grunts of effort. She was not a pilot in a machine. She was a brawler in a suit of armor, and this was her alley. They're trying to get behind you, Mira. Jay's voice warned in her ear. Let them try, she breathed, and fired the mech's secondary thrusters. Goliath spun with surprising speed, slamming its armored back into 3 skiffs, trying to sneak past, crushing them against the hull of the unyielding Spirit. On the stalwart Resolve, Executor Kavar watched the human sector being consumed. The anvil was being buried. His heart, an organ that beat with ancient, proud traditions, felt a new, fierce beat of urgency. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All vessels, his voice boomed, stripped of all its former pride, filled only with grim purpose. The anvil holds. Now we are the hammer. Power all new systems. Target the rear of the swarm mass. Fire on my mark. For our homes. For our future. Fire. Across the coalition fleet, 1,000 captains gave the order. But it was not the order they had given for centuries. The space behind the Devourer swarm did not light up with the clean, colorful beams of phased lasers. It erupted in a storm of crude, violent physics. Thalassian dreadnoughts, their beautiful hulls now studded with hastily fitted rail launchers, hurled mountains of shredded wreckage and refined tungsten blocks. Xylos carriers, designed for launching graceful fighters, opened bays to release clouds of magnetically accelerated scrap metal. Kasari cruisers fired modified mining charges. It was not elegant. It was not precise. It was a galactic-scale shotgun blast. The effect on the Devourer swarm was catastrophic. They were built to absorb and disperse energy. They had no defense against being physically smashed apart. The rear of the swarm, where ships were packed tightly for the assault on the humans, dissolved into a cloud of shattered chitin and frozen fluid. The ripple of destruction moved forward, breaking the swarm's cohesion. The Devourer hive mind, focused entirely on crushing the annoying human thorn, suddenly faced annihilation from behind. The orderly spearhead collapsed into confusion. On the human bridge, the pressure suddenly changed. The shuddering impacts lessened. The flood of red icons on Jay's screen began to break apart, to blink out in clusters. The hammer has struck. Jay shouted, the words a release of unbearable tension. The swarm is breaking up. They're scattering. Captain Su Jin allowed herself one deep, shuddering breath. All batteries, switch to free fire. Clear our space. Myra, push them back. With the swarm's will broken, the battle became a rout. The combined fire of the human anvil and the coalition hammer tore the Devourer armada to pieces. Ships that tried to flee were cut down. The relentless, unstoppable force had met an immovable, spiky object and a very movable, brutally heavy object. It had lost. Slowly, then all at once, the fighting stopped. The Cygnus Rift was quiet, save for the slow drift of countless fragments. The beautiful, wounded ships of the coalition floated amidst the sea of Devourer ruins. And at the center of it all, the battered, blocky, and utterly unbroken, unyielding Spirit hung in the silence. Inside the carrier, the only sounds were the beeping of systems and the exhausted sighs of the crew. Myra brought Goliath back into the mangled hangar. The mech's joints hissed as they locked down. She opened the cockpit and just sat for a moment, her hands trembling from adrenaline and fatigue. On the bridge, Ambassador Day looked at the main viewer, which now showed the stars, clear of enemy ships. He straightened his simple uniform. "They're hailing us, Captain. All of them." Su-jin nodded. "Put it on screen." The viewer divided into dozens of windows. The faces of the coalition leaders looked back. The Kesari Admiral, Never, his expression unreadable. The Thalassian philosophers. The Xylo scientists. And Executor Kavar in the central window. For a long moment, no one spoke. The universe was holding its breath. Kavar was the one to break the silence. He did not speak to the council. He spoke directly to Captain Su-jin. "Captain, the Cygnus Rift is secure. The Devourer Armada is destroyed. This victory belongs to you." He paused, as if searching for words from a new language. "We fought with the science of millennia. You fought with the will of a moment. We were wrong. We are." Stunned. Scholar Tleen's face appeared in another window, her silver skin shimmering with emotion. "Your species does not have a single great technology. You have a great flexibility. You see a wall, and you do not build a better ladder. You make a hammer, or a tunnel, or you learn to climb with your bare hands. We have never seen anything like it." The Kesari Admiral, Never, looked down, then back up. His voice was softer now. "My words were of fear and tradition. Your actions were of courage and necessity. The coalition thanks you." It was clearly difficult for him to say. It meant everything. Captain Su-jin looked at the faces of the galaxy's most advanced species, all looking at her with awe and a new, profound respect. "We just did what we had to do," she said simply. "We're glad we could help." The formal communications began then, offers of aid, of medical support, of towing their wounded ship. But the important message had already been sent across the stars to every listening world. Humanity was here. They were not the children of the galaxy. They were the survivors. And they had just saved everyone. Later, as repair shuttles from coalition ships docked with the unyielding Spirit, Jay finally stood up from his console. He walked to a viewing port. Outside, a Thalassian repair vessel, its lines graceful and smooth, was gently attaching a temporary hull patch to the ugly, scarred human ship. It was a strange, beautiful picture. Mira joined him, still in her grimy flight suit. She looked out at the fleet of elegant ships, now dotted with crude, human-inspired weapon modifications. "Looks like they're learning to get their hands dirty," she said with a tired smile. Jay nodded. "Yeah, I guess the universe just got a little more interesting." On the bridge, Captain Su-jin sat in her command chair, watching the same view. Ambassador Day stood beside her. "Everything is different now," he said quietly. "Yes," Su-jin agreed. Her ship was wounded. Her crew was exhausted. But they were alive. And they were no longer alone. They were part of a stunned, grateful, and forever changed universe. The battle was over. The story was just beginning.